Let's get right into it. Number 6. Traveling medicine shows. Imagine scrolling through TikTok and seeing an influencer claiming their magic tea cures everything from depression to cancer. Back in the 1800s, we had something way crazier. A wagon rolls into your small town, there's music, dancing, and some guy in a fancy suit claiming he's a doctor. He's not. This doctor would put on a whole show, like the world's weirdest TED Talk mixed with a circus. He'd pull out a bottle of something called snake oil and start making wild claims. This miracle elixir will cure your arthritis, fix your bad breath, and might even make your mother-in-law more tolerable. And people bought it. The original snake oil from China actually worked. It came from Chinese water snakes that were packed with omega-3 fatty acids. It was basically fish oil supplements from snakes, but these traveling salesmen weren't using Chinese water snakes. They were using whatever they could find, mostly rattlesnakes, which have about as much healing power as a rubber band. And that's if you were lucky enough to get actual snake in your snake oil. Most of these miracle cures were just a mix of alcohol, cocaine, and mineral oil. So basically, people were paying good money to drink spicy cocktails with a side of cocaine. No wonder they felt better after taking it. These shows were so popular that towns would literally shut down when they came through. It was like if Netflix, CVS, and the circus all rolled into one and only came to your town once a year. Some of these snake oil salesmen became millionaires. Clark Stanley, known as the Rattlesnake King, made a fortune until the government finally caught up with him. They tested his snake oil and found it contained exactly 0% snake. It was just mineral oil with some beef fat and red pepper. Imagine selling spicy beef grease as medicine and becoming rich. These shows only stopped when the government passed the Pure Food and Drug Act in 1906. Snake oil salesmen were so out of control that the government had to step in and create the FDA. Next time you see someone online selling miracle cures, remember they're just snake oil salesmen with better Wi-Fi. Number 5. Arsenic beauty wafers. Imagine you're living in Victorian times, scrolling through the 1800s version of Instagram. Everyone's posting pictures of themselves looking pale and sickly, because that was the hot look back then. The paler you were, the more attractive people thought you were. So to get that perfect I might die tomorrow glow, Victorian beauty magazines recommended eating arsenic. People were literally eating poison to look good. These arsenic wafers were sold everywhere, right next to the bread and milk at your local store. The ads promised you'd get that perfect ghostly complexion that all the cool kids were dying for. Literally, the companies selling these wafers actually bragged about the arsenic content on the label. It's like putting "now with extra cyanide" on a breakfast cereal box. The wafers came with helpful instructions like, take one after each meal, as if you're just popping a vitamin. Women would eat these things for months, slowly poisoning themselves in the name of beauty. The really wild part is some people actually built up a tolerance to the arsenic. They became what doctors called arsenic eaters, basically Victorian-era poison resistance champions. If they tried to stop, they'd get horrible withdrawal symptoms. So they were stuck in this cycle of either keeping up their daily dose of poison or feeling like death warmed up. And if you keep eating arsenic long enough, your hair falls out, your skin gets covered in sores, and your organs slowly shut down. But hey, at least you looked pale while it was happening. The craziest part is that people knew arsenic was deadly. It was the murder weapon of choice in Victorian times, so common they called it inheritance powder. Yet somehow, people convinced themselves that eating small amounts was totally fine. Today, we laugh at this, but then we go and inject botulinum toxin into our faces. Number 4. Phrenology. Imagine going to a job interview, and instead of looking at your resume, the interviewer starts feeling the bumps on your head. Sounds crazy. This was totally normal in the 1800s. People thought they could tell everything about you just by measuring your skull. They believed that if you were good at math, you'd have a bump in one spot. If you were creative, you'd have a bump in another spot. And if you were a criminal, they thought they could tell just by feeling your head. People would pay good money to have professional phrenologists read their skulls. These skull readers were like the fortune tellers of their time, except instead of looking at your palm, they were basically giving your head a massage. Rich parents would bring their kids to phrenologists to figure out what career they should pursue. Oh, your son has a large bump in the music area. He should definitely become a pianist. Phrenologists used their science to justify some pretty horrible things. They claimed they could identify criminals by their skull shapes. Some people were even convicted of crimes partly because a phrenologist said their head bumps made them look guilty. Phrenologists also used their head measuring nonsense to support racism, claiming that different races had different skull shapes that made them superior or inferior. This wasn't some fringe belief. Major universities taught phrenology. Doctors practiced it. Even Charles Darwin, yes, that Charles Darwin, almost didn't get to go on his famous Beagle voyage because the ship's captain didn't like the shape of his nose. He thought Darwin's nose showed he lacked determination, the same Darwin who later spent decades developing his theory of evolution. Today, we know that the shape of your skull has nothing to do with your personality or abilities. Number 3. Vinegar Valentines. Imagine getting a Valentine's card that calls you ugly, stupid, and worthless. Now imagine this was completely normal and happened all the time. Welcome to the Victorian era, where people didn't just send love letters. They sent hate mail disguised as Valentine's cards. These were called Vinegar Valentines, and they were absolutely brutal. It's Valentine's Day morning in 1847. You're excited to check your mail, hoping for a sweet message from a secret admirer. Instead, you open an envelope to find a card with an ugly caricature of yourself and a poem calling you a desperate old maid who'll die alone. You had to pay for receiving this insult. Back then, the recipient paid the postage. So not only did you get publicly roasted, you had to pay for the privilege. These cards weren't just playful teasing either. They were straight up savage, targeting everything from physical appearance to social status. One card showed a woman looking in a mirror with the caption, "You think you're beautiful, but you're just vain. No man will ever want your ugly face, that's plain." Another showed a drunk man with the words, "You claim to be a gentleman, but all can plainly see you're nothing but a drunkard who can barely climb a tree." Some cards were so brutal they actually led to suicides. These cards weren't just random insults. They were often used as social weapons. Women used them to reject unwanted suitors. Workers sent them to their bosses. Even political movements got involved, with suffragettes being both targets and users of these cards. Think of it as Victorian-era Twitter, but with better artwork and rhyming insults. And the wild thing is, nobody thought twice about it. It was such a big business that some card makers made more money from hate mail than love letters. So next time you're worried about getting ghosted on Valentine's Day, just remember, at least you're not getting a beautifully illustrated poem about how you're a worthless human being and having to pay for it. Number 2. Corpse medicine. Imagine walking into your local pharmacy with a headache. The pharmacist reaches under the counter and pulls out a container of ground-up human mummy. For centuries, this was just how things were done. Welcome to the wild world of corpse medicine, where dead people were basically medieval Tylenol. From the 12th to the 18th century, Europeans were absolutely obsessed with eating mummies. Even the noblest families kept a little stash of powdered person in their medicine cabinets. King Charles II of England had his own personal recipe for skull medicine. It was basically ground-up human skull mixed with alcohol. The demand for mummy medicine got so high that Egypt couldn't keep up with orders. So some clever entrepreneurs started making counterfeit mummies. They'd grab fresh corpses, dry them out with salt, wrap them up, and sell them as authentic Egyptian mummies. It was basically the world's first pyramid scheme. Doctors actually wrote prescriptions for this stuff. Headache, powdered mummy, bruised knee, corpse powder. And people weren't picky about their corpse quality. Fresh bodies were actually considered more potent than ancient mummies. So if you died in Europe between 1500 and 1700, there was a decent chance you might end up in someone's medicine cabinet. Number 1. Post-Mortem Photography. Imagine scrolling through your family photo album and finding a picture of your great-great-grandma, except she's dead in the photo. Sounds creepy, but in the Victorian era, this was a common tradition. Back then, getting your picture taken after you died was as common as posting selfies is today. These days, if someone dies, you probably have hundreds of photos and videos of them on your phone. But in Victorian times, cameras were rare and expensive. Most people went their whole lives without ever having their picture taken. So when someone died, families would rush to get one last photo. It was their only chance to have a memory they could hold on to. They went all out. They'd dress the dead person in their best clothes and do their hair. Sometimes they'd pose them sitting in chairs or even standing up using special metal stands, kind of like Weekend at Bernie's, but way more Victorian. They'd often pose living family members with the dead person. You might see a mother holding her dead baby, or children sitting next to their dead sibling, because early cameras needed people to stay completely still for several minutes. Sometimes the dead person would look clearer in the photo than the living ones who couldn't help moving slightly. The photographers even had tricks to make the corpses look more alive. They'd paint rosy cheeks onto the photo, or add a sparkle to the eyes. It's like the original Instagram filter, except instead of making you look better alive, it made you look better dead. This went on for decades until photography became cheaper and more common. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.